You're just in time. Your favorite refreshments are waiting. The sparkling drinks are ice cold and delicious. It's time for another classic cartoon feature presentation on Boomerang Theater. And now, on with the show.
Hello and welcome to Theme Park History, the channel for everything to do with theme parks, old and new, big and small. In today's episode, we board our spaceship and rocket into the world of animation as we explore the Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera, a motion simulator attraction that opened at Universal Studios Florida on June 7th, 1990. This attraction was suggested by the most daredevil group of daffy drivers to ever whirl their wheels in the wacky races, so thank you to everyone for the comments. As always, if there's any attraction you would like us to cover in a future video, leave a comment down below. You never know, your suggestion might be next month's video. Inspired by the iconic cartoon characters created by animators William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, guests join Yogi Bear and Boo-Boo in a wacky and wild adventure to save Elroy Jetson from the devious duo of Dick Dastardly and his sidekick Muttley, traveling through the universe of the Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, and the Jetsons. The first ever simulator attraction at the park makes guests see, hear, and feel what it's like to be inside a cartoon. Before we find out how the likes of Yogi Bear, the Flintstones, Scooby-Doo, and the Jetsons made Universal Studios Florida their home away from home, it's only fair to talk about the duo not only responsible for those characters, but also who the attraction is named after. On February 10th, 1940, MGM would release the animated short Puss Gets the Boot. The 9-minute cartoon featured a cat named Jasper and an unnamed mouse in a comical game of cat and mouse with slapstick gags. The animated short was a critical success, earning an Academy Award nomination for Best Short Subject, Cartoons, in 1941. The duo behind the short would be animators William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, who wrote and directed the cartoon. MGM would give the two the green light to continue creating theatrical shorts based on the cat and mouse that would become better known as Tom and Jerry. Hanna and Barbera would produce 114 Tom and Jerry shorts from 1940 to 1958, winning 7 Academy Awards for animated short film, tying for first with Walt Disney's Silly Symphonies with the most awards in the category. After the closure of the MGM Cartoon Studio in 1957, the pair would go on to create their own animation studio named HB Enterprises. If you're wondering why it's always been Hanna before Barbera, a coin toss won by Hanna gave him precedence in naming the studio. HB Enterprises would become the first major animation studio to produce cartoons exclusively for television, with such hit shows as the Huckleberry Hound Show in 1958, the Flintstones in 1960, the Yogi Bear Show in 1961, the Jetsons in 1962, and Scooby-Doo, Where Are You in 1969. The studio also produced several animated TV commercials, often starring their own characters.
Watch me fool Fred into giving me his Cocoa Pebbles. Hello, Fred.
Bonnie, you looked so alive yesterday. How can I make it up to you for the times I didn't treat you right?
Cocoa Pebbles.
Here, Bon, you always loved Cocoa Pebbles.
Heavenly flavor.
Barney, we're going to be late for the costume party.
Costume party? You're no angel.
You said it, Fred.
Post Cocoa and Fruity Pebble cereals, a great tasting part of a balanced breakfast.
Eventually incorporated as Hanna-Barbera Productions, the studio would become a leader in TV animation production for almost 30 years, responsible for over 100 different animated series during that span. By the late 1980s, the studio was struggling, as outside of the Smurfs, many of the animated series created weren't successful, along with competition from other animation studios who were producing successful shows based on licensed properties. David Kirshner, Hanna-Barbera Productions president and CEO at the time, set out to rejuvenate the company by putting a focus on its most widely recognized characters, reintroducing them to younger generations. Luckily for the studio, there would be a brand new theme park in the Sunshine State interested in their characters. Universal Studios Florida. The park, which focuses on the entertainment industry, specifically with movies and television, features numerous attractions and live shows that cater to older audiences. Still wanting to include rides for families with younger children, Universal would license an array of Hanna-Barbera characters to create a child-friendly simulator attraction, the Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera. Construction on the attraction would begin in mid-1988, with Peter Alexander of the Totally Fun Company as the lead designer, Mario Camberg as the ride's director, and William Hanna as a creative consultant. The attraction would be a loose tie-in to Jetsons the movie, which was distributed by Universal Pictures and released a month after the attraction opened on July 6, 1990. The ride film would be the first ever to predominantly use computer-generated imagery, with the characters created using traditional cell animation techniques and optically composited. Wanting the Hanna-Barbera characters to have their classical animation look, Universal would hire Bob Kurtz and his animation studio Kurtz and Friends to produce the animated footage. Even though it seemed to be a good fit, as the company had already worked on sequences for Jetsons the movie, midway through production of the ride's film, Kurtz and his company would resign from the project, citing creative differences. Sullivan Bluth Studios. Created by legendary animator Don Bluth, who had worked with Universal in the past for the animated movie An American Tail, would be brought in to finish the footage. Unlike other simulator attractions at the time, which placed guests inside an enclosed ride vehicle, viewing the ride film through a small window, this new simulator takes place inside a large auditorium, having guests board their ride vehicle to view the film on a large screen that is in front of them. Known as the Motion Theater, Universal would use this ride system once again for Back to the Future, the ride. Manufactured by Intamin's subsidiary Ride Trade, the motion car vehicles can hold up to 8 guests in 2 rows of 4 and boast 4 degrees of freedom. The motion was programmed by Trey Stokes and Dave Phillipson, who also designed the software for the ride system. The attraction features many of the popular characters created by Hanna-Barbera Productions, including Yogi Bear, voiced by Greg Burson, Elroy Jetson, voiced by Patrick Zimmerman, Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble, voiced by Henry Corden and Frank Welker, and Scooby-Doo and Shaggy, voiced by Don Messick and Casey Keenum. Paul Winchell, who originally voiced Dick Dastardly in Wacky Races, declined to reprise his role due to a stroke he suffered several years prior. He would be replaced by Michael Bell, whose near-perfect emulation of Dastardly's sinister persona would get him a return role to voice the character in the Fender Bender 500 segments in the show Wake, Rattle, and Roll, costing between $13 and $14 million to be built. The Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera would officially open with Universal Studios Florida on June 7, 1990.
You're not gonna believe where I've just been. Universal Studios Florida, where they have Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera ride. Well, that's a chase. It's not a chase that you watch, but you're in it. And there's only one place you'll find it, in Orlando, at the Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera at Universal Studios Florida.
Located within the production central area of the park, guests enter Soundstage 42, the new headquarters for Hanna-Barbera Productions. Throughout the queue, television monitors play various clips from Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Guests eventually reach the end of the queue and enter into the pre-show room, which features 3 large projection screens. Yogi Bear appears, harassing one of the guests for the double-decker salami and cheese sandwich they somehow snuck into the park. It's revealed by Yogi's best friend Boo-Boo that guests are actually there to learn more about the world of animation. However, since the two are just bears, they leave it up to their bosses, William Hanna and Joseph Barbera, to properly educate the guests. After wrapping up their meeting with other Hanna-Barbera cartoon characters, the two talk about working with animation for over 30 years and draw Elroy Jetson from the Jetsons, who magically jumps off the page and comes to life like the other characters were earlier. Besides hand-drawn, Hanna talks about how computers are now being used to create 3D animation. A computer in the office creates a 3D drawing of Dick Dastardly's spaceship. Dastardly and his sidekick Muttley appear from the spaceship, demanding to star in their own movie. Hanna and Barbera inform the two that the Jetsons movie will be released first, followed by the Flintstones, then Scooby-Doo as part of the Phase 1 of the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. Angry at the news, Dastardly kidnaps Elroy as ransom by using a toilet plunger gun to pull him into the computer, declaring, "If I'm not the star of the next project, then no one will be." The computer begins to malfunction, creating a wormhole that transports guests into the universe created by Hanna-Barbera. Yogi and Boo-Boo enlist the guests into helping them save Elroy by taking their own rocket ship to chase down the evil duo. Guests exit the pre-show and head into the main theater, which is made to look like a giant rocket ship and can fit a total of 96 people at once. Once all guests are seated and their lap bars are lowered, Captain Yogi and his co-pilot Boo-Boo prepare for takeoff. The rocket ship is launched from the home base by a large rubber band via a giant slingshot, with the force launching the rocket all the way back to the Stone Age and the town of Bedrock. Guests fly off a cliff and through Mr. Slate's construction site, narrowly missing Fred Flintstone while he's busy at work. Yogi and the guests chase after Dastardly through the streets, dodging cars and residents of Bedrock, eventually following him into a burning building. As they follow him through the smoke, they enter a vortex into another cartoon universe. Guests now find themselves in a cemetery in the middle of the night, narrowly avoiding a collision with the mystery machine being driven by Shaggy and Scooby-Doo. Yogi chases Dastardly into a haunted castle, looking for him down hallways and corridors, dodging a couple of ghosts, and eventually encounter Scooby and Shaggy, who are left hanging on a chandelier while guests chase after Dastardly into another vortex and cartoon universe. Now in the space age, Yogi and the guests end up in Orbit City, who are joined by Jane and George Jetson, along with Rosie the robot, in the chase to rescue their son. Yogi and the Jetsons chase Dastardly into the Coney Skyland amusement park and follow him on a massive roller coaster. After going down a steep drop, Rosie extends her arm and lifts Dastardly and Muttley from their rocket, allowing George to save Elroy. The villains crash into one of the rides, which destroys their spaceship, and are suddenly surrounded by thousands of cops, who capture the two and send them off to jail. The Jetsons thank Yogi before he flies through one last vortex back to home base. While making the final approach, Yogi is concerned since he's never landed a rocket ship before. The rocket ship crash lands back at the station, sending Yogi into a giant inflated bumper reading end. Yogi gives the guests a farewell message. So folks, thanks for joining in the ride. I'll see you on the outside. A lamp comes down from the top, which Yogi pulls the light switch, making the screen go black. Guests exit the attraction and enter a post-show area, which features a variety of hands-on exhibits for children to learn about the animation process, along with a meet and greet area with the characters encountered throughout the ride. Besides the post-show, there is the Hanna-Barbera Store, where merchandise of the characters and the attraction are sold. The 7.5-minute attraction was a hit with families and younger guests, as many praised the ride's fun story and whole cast full of classic Hanna-Barbera characters, making it one of the most child-friendly experiences the park has to offer. The attraction would quickly become one of the most popular at Universal Studios Florida, due in part to being one of the few rides to work properly that open with the park, having wait times anywhere between 90 minutes to 2.5 hours. While the Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera was a hit when it opened in 1990, just like the cartoons it featured, the attraction's popularity would begin to fade in the following years, with guests becoming less aware of who these cartoon characters were by the late 1990s. The attraction's attendance levels began to dwindle. Universal would make the decision to replace the attraction in 1998, and would announce in July 2002 that it would not renew its contract to use the Hanna-Barbera characters at the park. The attraction would officially close on October 20th, 2002, in order to make room for its replacement, Jimmy Neutron's Nicktoon Blast. In a surprising twist, the attraction would take on a second life in 2006, as Paramount Parks would acquire the license to the motion simulator for use in their parks under the same name. Ironically, after the license expired, the ride would be replaced at each of the parks by another Nickelodeon attraction, SpongeBob SquarePants 4D. The attraction would also make appearances at other parks including Kentucky Kingdom, the park at Mall of America, and Dollywood. So why did the attraction close? With the Hanna-Barbera characters' dwindling popularity and relevance by the late 1990s, Universal wanted to replace them with ones that were more popular and recognizable to children at the time. The park already had a working relationship with Nickelodeon, as the company joined Universal Studios Florida to create their first production studio, aptly named Nickelodeon Studios. Another reason for the attraction's closure was due to Universal Orlando's new park, Islands of Adventure, drawing guests away from Universal Studios Florida. With declining attendance levels, Universal began to take an aggressive stance on replacing the original classic attractions with newer, more exciting experiences in an attempt to help boost turnout at the park. Replacing the 30-plus-year-old cartoon characters with Nicktoons that were at the peak of their popularity would be an easy decision for Universal to make. Placing guests in their own animated adventure, the Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera was a fun and enjoyable experience that anyone, no matter what the age, could be entertained by. Featuring many of the iconic cartoon characters guests most likely watched on television when they were just kids, or even later as adults, the attraction brought Yogi Bear, the Flintstones, Scooby-Doo and the Jetsons to life in a unique and impressive one-of-a-kind encounter. Even though it closed in 2002, the attraction is still recognized today by Universal fans as one of the unsung staples that open with the park, with one word used to describe it: Funtastic. So that is the theme park history of the Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera. As always, thank you for watching the video and supporting the channel. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and if there's any attraction you would like us to cover in a future video, leave a comment down below. Once again, thank you for watching, and until next time, hang on, is that a bomb? Drat Muttley, this is all your fault!